Hey guys, it is Christina here. For those of you who don't know me, I am a naturopath, a herbalist, a GAPS practitioner, and a life coach, and a mum of 7, and a wife, and all of the things. I'm also super into gardening right now. But I did get asked this question this week, which I thought was a really good question. And I thought it's been a little while since I've shared some of this on my Facebook page, so I should come and share with you guys my answer to the question. Hi Jennifer, nice to see you here. So the question that I got asked this week was, why did I get into natural health in the first place? Because they asked me, have I been a naturopath for long, and just a little bit about my experience and who I am. And I'd said that I'd really been digging in and starting to learn and build on my knowledge when it came to natural health for a good 17 years. And it started when I was pregnant with my first baby. And I think back to who I was before then, and I have to laugh because I just go, oh my gosh, Christina, you've turned into all the things that you said you wouldn't do. Like homeschooling, because I used to study, I was a teacher. And, I remember going, I'm never going to homeschool. There's kids are going to miss out on socialization and blah, 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 all the things. And then now I'm a homeschooler and I have been for 13 years. So I laugh at those sorts of things. But how it all started in regards to me making the decision to step into natural health was when I was pregnant with my first baby. I had a condition called gestational diabetes. Now, my father had diabetes a long time, he had it for a long time. I was in my teens when he got it. So, easily 20 years. But by that time, it was maybe about 15 years. And I watched him go through it, and I watched the challenges that were facing him. And I watched, him having to prick his finger 3 times a day, and then he was insulin dependent, and, then having to inject insulin and all of the things. And I had vowed to myself that I was never going to be a diabetic. In my childlike mind at the time of watching him go through this, I'd said to myself, if I get diabetes, I'm just going to kill myself, and that will be the end of it. As you do when you're 15 and you're bulletproof, and you think things in a really interesting way because you don't have worldviews that have completely developed and all that sort of stuff yet. Jennifer's saying, I love how our children can change our whole way of thinking. Yes, they can. And so I remember getting this diagnosis in the doctor's office that I had gestational diabetes. And, because of that previous experience with my father, my gut just sank. And I was like, nope, I'm not having this. I'm not having it. That was kind of what was going on for me. And it's my rebellious spirit. The more that I get to know myself and the more that I really understand my personality typing and all of that sort of stuff, I just sit back and laugh at how I reacted to those things without knowing who I was and how I responded to the world. And it just naturally came out. So in this situation, I went through kind of those stages of grief where I was in rejection and denial. No, it was not happening. But then I went into this stage of finding out as much as I could about gestational diabetes. So I went to the university library and I just went through all of the obstetric books that I could get my hands on that talked about diabetes, and they talked about gestational diabetes. So I looked at both of those two conditions. And I just sat there and I read, and one of the books that I had was specifically for pregnant women. And in it said that in the research that they'd been doing was that women who were on insulin in the last 6 weeks of pregnancy had a higher risk of miscarriage or having a higher risk of stillborn or stillbirth in that last 6 weeks of miscarriage. There was a higher chance that your baby would die in utero if you were on insulin. And so I learned this information and I was just like, that's really interesting. I want to avoid that risk as much as possible. So what do I need to do to avoid that risk? And then, of course, the more I researched, the more I was understanding, the more that I was learning that diabetes was a condition that really had strongholds in carbohydrate and glucose intake. And so the higher and the more glucose you intook, the more insulin you needed. And if there was a diabetic problem, then the key or the insulin didn't necessarily match the amount of glucose, and then that didn't get into the muscles and all of that stuff. So I was learning more and more about that. And of course, everything that I was learning was, was leading me to this idea that in order to control it naturally, what I would need to do, along with Hi, Stacey. Along with utilising some herbs and minerals that would be really important for that, was, controlling my food intake and what sorts of foods I was actually consuming. In particular, really reducing those carbohydrates and high glycemic rich foods. And so I took that on board and I was starting to implement that into my diet. And because I'd been living on the standard Australian diet up until that point, we probably had takeout quite a bit at that point as well, because I was feeling really sick from the pregnancy. Like my head was in a bucket all the time. So the capacity, like Ben at that stage had not yet built his muscle around cooking food. So, my head was in a bucket for most of the time. So it was sometimes, really easy just to get quick, easy food. So we'd been eating a lot of crap food, definitely not nutritious food. And so, I was making this change of going from this crap food diet to like really consciously bringing my awareness to how much carbohydrate am I eating, how much glucose am I eating, how much, high carbohydrate foods am I eating, and all of that sort of stuff. And I was working through it, and it took a good month or so to really get a diet going and get it implemented. But I could see that my body was responding to it. My blood sugars were coming down and it was responding to it. During that month though, however, I had to go and do the gestational diabetes education. So I had to go to the diabetes educator. And, they teach you how to use the blood glucose machine and how to take your blood glucose measurements and how to record it and all of that sort of stuff. They teach you all of those things, and then they give you like a really brief talk about, lowering your carbohydrates or being mindful about how much sugar you're eating. But there was no recipes. They didn't send you home with a booklet of recipes and things like that. They didn't even have a book. Like I was asking, where are the resources? What resources can I have? What books can I take home? Like what books could I get? All of that sort of stuff. And they just didn't have any. And I was like, oh gosh, that's really frustrating. And then when I went into my sessions with the doctor, I really distinctly recall this session where they were saying, okay, so your blood sugar's not coming down enough just yet, so I think we need to start you on insulin. I'm like, no, hang on a bit. I've only been on this diet for 2 weeks. I'm going to have a couple more weeks, and if, I can get this managed successfully, then I'm not going to go on insulin. I'm going to do all the things that I can do to do that. And they're like, oh, you're just being a pain. Like, this is the best thing for your baby. Like, they really spoke in a way that was really derogatory. And then, I said, I don't want to go on insulin if it's not absolutely necessary, because I've read this information that it increases the death of your baby in the last 6 weeks of pregnancy. And they're like, oh, you need to get off the internet and stop reading things. And I hadn't even read any of that on the internet. I had read it from the university obstetric books that were in my local university where I'd been working. That's where I was reading it from their medical books, the books that taught them how to be doctors. And so that was another moment of it being really derogatory. And then the next thing that happened was going along to the diabetes education session. So there was all these pregnant mums there. Yes, there were some mums that didn't really, they weren't going to actually change their diet. But then there were other mums that just would have moved heaven and earth to do the best thing possible for their babies. And I remember sitting in these sessions, and of course I'd been doing all this learning and doing all of this reading. It was like a crash course on nutrition. And I'd been doing all this learning and all this reading, and the things that the diabetic educator was telling me was like, this is how many Coca-Colas you can have in a day. This is how much pasta you can have in a day. This is how much cereal you can have in a day. This is how many slices of bread you can have in a day. None of it was talking about, here's a beautiful salad that you could be eating that's going to nourish you and your baby. Here's these beautiful meats that will be, really great for building, good bones and material for your baby and yourself, and it's going to help regulate your blood sugar. Here's the fats that are going to help regulate your blood sugar. None of that. It was talking about like the carbohydrates, and it was really, if I had followed the diet that they were giving me in that session, I would 100% have been on insulin. But I had done my research and I had been learning about this and starting to question it. And I think in the end, they were like very glad to get rid of me, because by the time I'd been through that education thing, like on the last day, which was like 4 sessions, I was like, hang on a second. So you're saying we should have margarine, which has polyunsaturated fats in it, but it also has trans fats in it. And trans fats are inflammatory. So that's going to cause more problems to our system. And she's like, oh no, we don't have trans fats here in Australia. And I'm like, hang on a second. Yeah, we do. And they don't have to advertise that we have it. Like, as long as it's under 5% of what's in the product you're eating, they don't have to advertise it. So it's like me saying, here's a beautiful cup of coffee, but I've just put less than 5% dog turd in it. Do you still want to drink it? No, you don't still want to drink it. And so by the end of it, I'm pretty sure they were really glad to get rid of me. But the long story short, that was for me that moment of actually really coming to awareness that I wanted to do things a different way. I wanted to do them more holistically. I wanted to have doctors that were working with me for my goals of I want to avoid medication as much as possible, because of course in pregnancy you start one medication, then the snowball effect continues on for the likelihood of other interventions. Now that doesn't mean it's always going to happen that if you take one thing it's going to lead to another thing, but it means that there is this strong propensity or whatever. There is this strong roller coaster, essentially, of that actually happening, of you ending up with more interventions and more complications. And I often think back to that very first pregnancy, and I was really just starting to get to know myself and get to know how my body worked and how my personality worked and how, just me as a person actually worked. And I was really just scraping the surface, and not even that when it came to getting to know who I am. And I wish if I could step back in time and take the knowledge that I have now, and what I would give to my younger self in those moments was I would encourage the heck out of her for doing the research and actually jumping in and learning about this thing, and learning how to work with my body and work with the metabolic system and all of those sorts of things. I would encourage her for that, but I would also tell her to get to know herself more and to understand how she worked and how she ticked and the things that were important to her at that point in time, because I know that pregnancy and what happened in the birth of that pregnancy was because I didn't understand birth. I really understood gestational diabetes, but I probably needed to understand birth in a more holistic way at that point, and really delve into the things like hypnobirthing and being supported in birth, and maybe home birth and all of those sorts of things. If I'd known those, I hope those trucks aren't coming through too bad. But if I'd known those things about myself, I 100% believe that I could have avoided the cesarean that I had. And the cesarean that I ended up having with that pregnancy was because I'd been laying on my back for 24 hours. I hadn't been up and moving. I hadn't been hydrated. I was also a personality type at that point where I was super shy, especially around my body. I was really shy. I was one of those people that didn't go to a public toilet room and poop. I couldn't do that. I would hold that until I got home. That was not happening in public because, it just was who I was at that point in time. I'm much more relaxed now. But at that point, knowing who I was huge alarm bells for going into a hospital setting to give birth and have a baby, and have doctors and nurses who would come in and look at your bits and poke and prod and do all the things. My personality at that time, that just wasn't going to work, and actually helping me relax and helping me give in to the birthing process and allow it to take place. So I fought birth quite a lot, and then that of course led to a really long period. There was 20 hours where I'd stalled in that. I'd got to 4 centimeters and then I just didn't go any further until 20 hours after, and then suddenly I went from 4 centimeters to 10 centimeters really quickly. But had I been able to let go and relax and had people around me who knew how to support me in a way to do that, who got me up and moving, who did all of those sorts of things, if I'd been more prepared in that space, 100% believe that cesarean wouldn't have happened. And then when I think about what happened after that cesarean, that was the foundational cesarean that then led to my placenta precreta happening. So, hindsight is a beautiful thing, and of course I can't take it back, but I can take responsibility for, not getting to know myself in those early years. And what would I do for somebody else? What would I teach for my children? What would I teach for other people? What would I teach for new mums? And of course, now I work with pregnant women all the time because they come to me for fertility to help them fall pregnant. And we continue throughout the pregnancy working together. And of course, I get to teach them all those beautiful things now. So, there's beautifulness that has come out of the frustration and the my mishaps and my mistakes and the learning that I took from that that I get to pass on to other people. But essentially, that was the thing that really started me on this journey of natural health and learning about natural health and learning how our body worked and learning about food and nutrition. And I still wasn't awesome at that point. I was still learning, but I was, prepared for future pregnancies, and I was prepared for what came next. And that was the roller coaster that really began the journey that I have been on for the last 16, 17 years now. Getting to know food, getting to know the body, getting to know how our metabolic systems work and how to utilize herbs to actually help nourish us, as well as, vitamins and minerals and all of those beautiful things. So, that was the answer to my question, and what got me started in it. It was that experience in my first pregnancy of having gestational diabetes, going and researching the heck out of it, and sitting in doctors' offices and being belittled for learning about how my body worked and wanting to do the best thing for my baby, wanting to provide my baby with the best possible outcomes that we could have, and whatever that would be. But I'm going to try hard, and I'm going to do as much as I possibly can to create that scenario where we have beautiful outcomes. And not having medical teams that worked with me with that, not having medical teams that really listened and understood and listened to my fears and listened to what was going on for me and actually helped support and work with those things. That was the big thing that changed, because I think that's one of the big things that I do when I'm working with my clients is listen to them. What is it that they want? What is it that they need? I have people who are happy to be on their medication. I have people who are not happy to be on their medication. I have people who want to avoid medication, like people in all different spaces. And it's, for me, not about creating what I think they should have, but actually helping them create what they think they should have or what they want, and help them achieve the goals that they actually have for their health, not just kind of dictate to them what I think that they should have, because it's not about me. At the end of the day, it's all about them, and they are the ones that have to do the work. They're the ones that are going to, have to manage whatever things that I might, prescribe for them or teach them or share with them and guide them with. They're the ones that are going to have to take responsibility for that in order to create the results that they want to have. So it's not about what I want, it's about what they want. And I just think how differently that birth could have been if I'd had maybe a medical team that really did listen and really did want to work with me, and really did here's the thing, here's the bottom line. Like, when it came to that diabetic education, one of the things that they said is, but most people aren't going to change their diet, so we just teach them the best that we can. And I'm like, I don't want the best that we can because of that. I want the best. I want everything. I want to know, I want to be able to make an active choice about what I can do for my body and what I can do with my circumstances and, what I have available to me, the resources that I have. I want to make active choices on that. And I can't make those active choices if you don't give me the information. And to be fair to them, they didn't have the information. They were just teaching what they'd been taught. They hadn't necessarily delved into it even more. At that point, Dr. Fecky hadn't been around. Keto wasn't even really that wasn't even around that much at that point. There were a couple of things here and there that were around. So there wasn't as much education about those things in diabetic control naturally. At that point, there was some, but not as much as there is today. So to be fair for them, yes, that was accurate and true too. But I also have to thank them, because if they'd given me that education of, maybe, who knows, if they'd given me that education of food as nourishment and food for my body and my baby and all of that sort of stuff, and how to manage blood sugar control with food really effectively, not here's how many pastas you can have and how many Coca-Colas you can drink in a day. If they'd given me that, then perhaps I wouldn't be on this journey that I'm on, and I wouldn't have impacted as many people as I have. So I probably should be thankful for them. But it's interesting to reflect back, and that was the start of it all for me. It was that moment of learning that I had a condition that I never wanted, because I was very angry about getting it. It was funny to think back at. But that's it for me. That's what really started me on that journey. And so, hi everybody who's watching. If you have any questions, pop them in. I'm happy to answer any questions. Jennifer, you're right about personality type. I too am grateful for my stubborn personality that encourages me to ask questions, trust my instincts, and do my own research. Shyness does hold me back, but maybe that's for a reason I haven't worked out yet. Perhaps as well. And yes, you're welcome. I'm happy to share. For me, it's my rebellion. I have definitely got a rebellious streak. I have a strong personality typing. So in the DISC profiling, I'm a DI in that order. And I have a very strong rebellious streak. So, telling me to do something is usually not the way to get me to do it. I definitely probably need some logic behind doing it, but also telling me to do it just because is not going to get me to do it. I need more reasons than that. But it's good. I take hold of that and I use that to every opportunity that I have, and it makes me learn a lot of information that I wouldn't have learnt if I didn't have that in me. So thank you for listening. Again, if you want to join the naturopathic membership, life membership, you totally can. Like, the link is in the header of this page if you want to find it. Every week we are doing something. So this month we've been working on detoxification. So our masterclass was on detoxification. I like to keep them to around an hour, but this one went for an hour and a half because I couldn't shut up. And there's still more. There's always more that I could talk about. And then we talked about St. Mary's Thistle, which is one of the best herbs, I think, in regards to supporting detoxification because it's hepatoprotective and it protects the liver, which is great for everyone. We all need some liver protecting in the life that we're living right now. Like, I've had 4 trucks go past, which means they're all releasing, toxins into the air right near my house, and we're probably breathing it in. So we all need more detoxing support. And this week, oh my gosh, this week in the Naturopathic Life membership, we're going to be talking about the emotions that are connected with the liver. And this is one of those things that cracks me up every time. I'll usually get a new client who's jumped into GAPS and they might start GAPS intro. And GAPS intro, just like, you take away all of the stuff and really your body just does a thorough clean out. And so my clients are messaging me going, I don't know why, but I'm so angry. I'm like, your liver is moving. That's very good. So we're going to be talking more about that. We'll be talking about the emotions with that and some of the work that you can do to support yourself if you're going through detoxification. If you have some detox pathways that are blocked, let's say you've got MTHFR, and you have some issues in regards to those detox pathways through the liver, then you are more likely to be somebody that holds on to unresolved anger. So we're going to be talking about all of that in the Naturopathic Life membership this week. And then next week, we're going to have a live question and answer where you jump on Zoom with me and you get to talk with me for an hour about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Ask questions about the content from the previous weeks. Ask about what's going on in your life, or what you should be doing right now to support your health through winter. All of those sorts of things. Another truck. All right, that's it for me today. I'll catch you next time. Don't forget to go watch my YouTube channel. I can put the link in the comments for you. And catch you next time. Bye for now. Have an amazing day.